Hello, everyone. Welcome to Achieving Success with Olivia Akin. I am your host, Olivia Akin. Each week, we will discuss the roadmap of achieving your personal and professional success. We give you real-life stories on growing personally and professionally to achieve your life and career goals with the help of some top-notch guests. Today, we are speaking with Quinn Dallai. Quinn Dallai is the founder of Juke Marketing. Quinn is a digital marketing entrepreneur with a passion for helping small and medium-sized businesses adapt to the digital landscape. His company specializes in custom web design and local SEO strategies, ensuring businesses not only show up where their customers are searching, but also thrive in a competitive market. What sets Juke apart is its commitment to transparency and partnership. With frequent meetings and clear, accurate monthly reports, Quinn and his team work closely with clients to drive measurable success. As Quinn puts it, your success is our success. You can find Quinn on LinkedIn by searching Quinn Dallai or Juke Marketing, as well as going to his website, juke.marketing, or by emailing him at quinn@juke.marketing. Hello, Quinn. It's fantastic having you on the show today.
Hi, Olivia. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm so excited to chat about SEO and achieving success. So thanks so much.
I'm excited because I have seen you grow as an entrepreneur in myself, which makes me like a proud mama at this point with you. And really excited to talk about that and our journey working together, how we came to kind of be mentor mentee, but also build not just a mentor and mentee relationship, but also a relationship where we help both of our businesses and understanding that it can work both ways. There's been times you've been a sounding board for me when I've had a rough day there, and it really is so dynamic. But to
Absolutely.
start off the show, can you tell me what success means and look like to Quinn Dallai?
Yes. So for me, success on a broad level is just living with purpose. And what I mean by that is that success is a very loaded question to answer. But when you break it down, it really comes down to what you're doing on a daily basis and how that connects to the overarching goal that you see yourself accomplishing. So for me, obviously, that's building something from the ground up, turning my ideas into a reality, and ultimately turning Juke Marketing into a multi-million-dollar marketing agency one day. In the short term, I'd say my real short-term success goals are to find financial freedom and personal growth and always kind of attack the world to learn more and get more out of each day. And business wise, it's really just helping my clients to achieve measurable results with their search marketing. So, kind of a loaded question, but I think to answer it shortly, it's just what you do every day and how that connects to your main mission in life.
And I think it's important to identify, as you said, success can look differently dependent on what pocket of our life we're putting it into. And you covered just then a handful of areas. So your long-term versus short-term, personal versus professional, yourself versus the goals you have for your clients. And they're all important to set your success goals for and what that looks like. And also then check in on yourself and say, okay, it's been 6 months. It's a new year, right?
Yeah.
What is that looking like for where I am today, the things I've learned, where I'm going, and what I'm going to want to be doing? And has this changed? And Quinn, one thing you mentioned as well is growing your business. And I talked about right before this question, your journey. Now, you recently graduated college, a college that holds dear to both of our hearts because you and I both graduated from Quinnipiac University. Some of our closest professors we both had, which is a whole nother aspect of the story. But Quinn, with you recently graduating college, which is often a time when many of your peers choose to work for established companies to gain experience or just thinking they're going to work in that setting their whole career, what inspired you to go, that's not the path I want to take? The path I want to go down is different, and it is the path of starting my own business instead.
Absolutely. So I've always had an entrepreneurial kind of bend to me. And I think for the longest time, it was a confusing desire to have because when you are an entrepreneurial minded person and you don't have that business to pour that energy into, it can feel confusing for you. And so I didn't have a specific business that I wanted to pursue. I had a couple concepts in college that I had gone through with pitch competitions. One was related to the NFT space, which obviously turned out to not be such a great space to be in. And after graduating college, I kind of had a really tough time at first. It was, I would say, humbling to realize that you've been on these rails of life. You've been pushed through life in a very systematic way. And that's in a way where school is leading you grade by grade, class by class, and assignment by assignment. And in that way, you're always kind of on a similar path to your peers, regardless of your major, regardless of what you're doing in school, you're progressing through. If you're graduating on time, you're progressing through at pretty much the same rate. So I feel like that's a comfortable period for people. And once you graduate, the guardrails are removed from your life and you're completely left out to figure out what is my purpose and how can I make money on it. And that was the moment after college where I was like, holy crap, I really have no idea what I want to do. And so one of the first things I did was I called up my favorite professor from Quinnipiac. Shout out to Dave Tomchek, amazing guy, and has helped me a lot. And I just explained this to him very openly, very transparently. I'm lost. And he said, well, first thing you need to know is that a career is made after the fact. So a lot of people try to plan like, oh, I'm going to go from this to this, and then maybe I'll have a chance to go from here to there. No, that's not how it's done. You're supposed to identify what skills make you a unique individual, what skills you would like to actually apply on a daily basis. And when I broke it down into that, I found that, I've always known I have a creative bend to me. I need to be able to innovate and solve problems. And once I had identified that, it put my brain into a state where I knew what I was looking for. And that's the thing about entrepreneurship is you're not always going to have the business that you might want. But if you're looking for a problem to solve, there are a million problems out there, and one of them will eventually connect with you. So I decided to take a bit of an abstract path. I did end up getting a job right after college in finance. But before I even accepted the offer, I knew that I was going to be pursuing my own business of sorts and kind of got an opportunity to start helping out a friend of a professor with their marketing on a very small budget and just kind of as a side thing at first. But I decided that, you know what, I'm going to take this job, have some constant income, and I'm going to see what I can do in a year. And if I'm in a place where I can leave, I'm going to leave and I'm going to go all in on my business.
And it's something when you and I also met through Dave Tomchek, who, I've gotten to know in various stages, an undergrad student, a graduate student, an alumni to professor, but also colleague to colleague, because I went back and taught at Quinnipiac. So I remember Tomchek reaching out to me and going, hey, there's this individual. I think you guys are going to get along. Would you be willing to have a conversation with him and give him some insight into your entrepreneurship journey, what you're working on, what it looks like, this and that? And I was like, Tomchek, it's you. Of course. Like, you don't got to ask twice. Like, of course. And then we got on a call and I said, like, you're doing the right things. You also have to be realistic on where this journey is going to take you and understand that it can pivot and be okay with the pivot. And I remember that first conversation we had, you were just like, I'll do what it takes. Like, I will put in the extra hours. I'm okay with the pivot. I'm okay with having to learn. I understand I don't need everything. And I think that's one thing, as you mentioned, as an entrepreneur, a lot of times we have this idea, we potentially have this vision, we don't know which direction it's going to go, but we have that problem we want to solve.
Yep.
But we also need to understand that we're an expert in some things, and we also need that guidance and giving ourselves the grace to go, okay, I'm going to try this out. And if I don't like it, I will pivot. And that's something I think you've done very well too, is going, okay, I want to try this and see if it works in this area. And when it doesn't, like, I'm building this up so it is okay. And understanding that there are those, things we know and we're expert at, and there's things that we have an idea of the problem we can solve with individuals, but really understanding, can we solve that problem to the best of our ability?
Yeah, most definitely. I think that, working for a company like most of my peers are right now, it wasn't for me simply just because of the desire to innovate and solve problems rapidly. And as we know, at larger companies, there's obviously a ton of steps before something is implemented. And, if you're a brand new employee, your word doesn't always weigh as much as, some of the elder members of the organization. So I think I just wanted the opportunity to start learning and start trying things out and testing things out at a much more rapid level than a job would allow me to do. And in the first 6 months of just playing around with this whole thing and this whole idea, I swear I learned more than I did in honestly in college, I can even say, because there's just a big difference when you take on a problem and you have no one to blame for this problem. You're the one who decided to take it on. And then sometimes you realize, hey, I don't actually know how to do this. So then it's spending the time and trusting yourself and looking back on the other times you might have not known how to do something and just leaning on that inner trust that, hey, you know what? I figured that out. I figured that out. And now I'm going to figure this out.
And the other thing I want to bring up before we start diving into Juke Marketing and what you're doing is, one of the things you and I had a conversation about early on was, as you said, you set that goal for yourself. If I can make this viable in X amount of time, then I'm leaving my job and I know this is working. And one thing I challenged you on is, what does that actually look like?
Yep.
What does this is working look like? And I said, I want you to break it down into, what is that number at the end of the month that
Yep.
you could go, I've covered or I'm close to covering what I was making in my job. And so I'm comfortable with leaving. And I said, what do you need to get there? And then based on that, we broke it down by what's the client goal? And
Yep.
sometimes it's going, okay, here's that big goal. But then in that big goal, what are those small goals? And I remember us getting off the phone after that conversation, and your whole demeanor and mindset also shifted on how you perceived that goal. It went from when we started the conversation to, I have such a long way to go to be able to say this, to you going, oh, I just need 4 clients. We're good. Like, this is way more attainable. And then like an hour goes by and you're texting me, oh, I set up a meeting with this person. Oh, I set up this meeting. And it was getting your feet wet with that and that shift, that a lot of times when we're in the thick of things as entrepreneurs, we have to also say, do I need to approach the way I look at solving the problem differently? Do I have to change that outlook so that I can rejuvenate myself and be much more attainable? And you very much met that goal. Like, I want to tell everyone and highlight you a little bit. You turned around and then like in 3 months we're talking and you were like, oh yeah, I'm leaving. I'm giving my 2 weeks notice. And I'm like, go Quinn, like, look what you're doing. But it was also, like you said, a little bit of trial and error of like, how can I solve this problem for best people based on my knowledge the ability to sit down and learn the additional skills that as you came across the problem that was harder than you thought or whatever it might be, solving them. It was really considering how you wanted to build up your business and serve others, but was also looking at things differently that really gave you the ability to, in 90 days, go, oh no, we're good. I'm meeting those goals. We're giving that notice. What was that moment like for you, being like, now I could go into this full time?
So it started off, like I said, I had set the goal to leave this job before I even signed the offer letter, which to some might sound a little bit deceitful, but I knew what my goals were, and I knew that I needed some stability in the short term. And when I go back to Quinnipiac and I talk to the entrepreneurship students, I emphasize that you don't need to leave school with, you know, plans to go take on your own thing that's brand new and face scrutiny of your parents and your peers for not making any money. That is just not the way that the world works anymore. We live in a digital society where you can use your 5 to 9 after work to start building up something. And those weekends, those Saturday mornings became like almost a romantic time for me where I could really visualize my future. And I took advantage of the time where most people would be socializing and, playing video games. I still got plenty of that in too, but I think people don't realize that you really can build something while you have a job. And it's one of the best ways to start a business, without facing, issues with paying bills and stuff like that. So for me, when I finally reached that point, after we had the conversation, we broke down what I needed to do. And then it kind of takes this large gap of like, I'm here and I want to get to there. And it puts stepping stones along the way, almost like a check mark. I always think about like how to gamify these things. So I'm like, okay, level 1 is I get this client and retain them. And then level 2 is I get another client and retain them. And once you break it down like that, it really helps you a lot. I mean, you hear all the time, break down your tasks into smaller chunks. It's almost become like a cliche thing that you don't really think about, but it really is the key in taking something that's largely overwhelming and adjusting it into something that works.
When in today's digital driven culture, what motivated you to focus on a segment of marketing, especially local SEO and custom web design, that so many businesses are still unfamiliar with? And how did you identify this was the area you can make the biggest impact?
Right. So I think that at first I realized everyone knows about social media. A lot of businesses are already taking advantage of social media. Even some of the more traditional businesses, have started to adapt into that. And when I learned about SEO early on in my journey, I realized, hey, I have an MBA, and if I'm just learning about how this can help businesses, then the chances are that most owners of a roofing company or a home services business don't know about these things and don't know how it can be helping them. And it actually started in just the chance to help out a local roofing company. They had been introduced to me through a professor, and I really took on that challenge, and I was evaluating every single channel. Now, they specifically didn't really want to dive into social media too much. They had kind of a stigma against it, which you'll see with a lot of more traditional business owners that are a little on the older side. Is they don't really there's a little bit of resistance when it comes to transferring into this digital landscape. And that's really the core reason why I decided to start Juke, is because I realized this stuff is intimidating. This stuff is a completely new world for these legacy business owners that have, generations and generations of experience. And when we're talking about home service businesses, when we're talking about service businesses that hold these trades, time in the industry does matter. And these companies that have been around for decades, they've perfected this craft. And so I thought about how all these new businesses are going to come in with a digital edge and possibly be able to push out these legacy businesses with digital strategy. So I really wanted to protect the legacy of these businesses and really help them to establish themselves for the new world that we live in.
And I think I love how you also bring in the aspect of legacy businesses have the expertise. And sometimes, especially in today's age, as you mentioned, we're so quick to hire someone off social media, right? They're the and I'm blanking on her name, and I recently just saw this. She's someone who knows the Paul brothers, and she had one quick interview go viral. She ended up starting her podcast. I can't believe I'm blanking on her name right now, but she started a business, and then she started um, selling crypto. Like she partnered with someone, and she started selling crypto. And very quickly, like that released a few weeks ago, and then she didn't know the space at all. People started buying the crypto, and then within like a week it started plummeting, and it's now being investigated, and people are saying she might end up going to jail and over it, which is crazy. But
This is
like
the
again,
Talk to a girl,
yeah.
the girl from Talk to a, yeah.
And literally, it just demonstrates how everyone was so quick to go, okay, well, it's this girl. Of course, I'm going to buy into it. Like, she's all this presence. She knows what she's talking about. And really, she didn't. And now there's been this massive backfire about that. And time that if you had gone to someone who really knows the industry and invested your money that way, even though they might not be everywhere on social media, could have been in a very different situation. And she also took on the responsibility as someone who had that power in her voice to use it in not the best light because she didn't fully understand it and what she was getting into, potentially.
Right. Not going to make any claims of what she knew or didn't know, but what we saw was pretty much a classic rug pull. The project was hyped up using her name, and then turns out that the founders of the coin were 90% stake owners in it, and they took out all their money, which made everyone else's drop. So yeah, you're totally right. I mean, I think that using your name for something is definitely a powerful thing, but you have to really know the industry. And sometimes the most famous person for something isn't always the best to help you.
And I think that's so important. And it's also, how are you able to have the conversation, right? And we look at SEOing, we look at the podcast industry, and you and I have had many conversations about this. There are two industries right now that have buzzwords around them, right? SEOing is definitely a buzzword right now.
Yep.
Podcasting, definitely a buzzword right now. But when you start having conversations with people, there's people who definitely know the industry, like you and myself. You've taken the time to really learn it. You can dive into the conversations. You talk to individuals like us, and it's like, oh wait, they know their shit. They can talk to us. They can teach us something, right? And that's whether you're newer into a business year-wise, right? 0 to 6 or 0 to 10, for someone who's been in the industry for 20 years.
Yep.
That comes through versus the individuals who are leveraging those buzzwords to get business and they don't understand it. So in that time when SEOing is such a buzzword, how do you navigate really leaning in, and when you're talking to a potential client or a client, making them understand the importance of SEOing?
Yeah, so I think one thing that has really helped my success with Juke is being able to break down SEO into really the core value of what it is. Because when you're talking to a business owner, it's almost rude and pretentious to go at them with all of these buzzwords. I view it as just, you don't know your target market. Okay. When I'm talking to a roofer about how I can improve their visibility online, I'm not talking to them about the specifics of, well, I'm going to change your meta tags and we're going to put a keyword, that's not what they want to hear. They want to hear, hey, when your customers search roofing near me in X, Y, and Z counties, we're going to do our best to make sure that you're in that number one spot. And then I'll even go one step further. sometimes the best way to illustrate something to a business owner is to show them what their competitors are getting and what they're missing out on. And so a lot of the times I'll start by researching the competitors in the space, seeing who's coming up for the keywords that would be ideal for their business, which in many cases is just the service you provide plus the location, or near me if someone's just searching for a business near them. And so when you look at this traffic, I can say, okay, wow, well, this competitor, which, a lot of the time your competitors that you might know about in real life aren't even the same competitors who you're competing with for these searches. So I've had a lot of times where clients will go, I've never heard of these guys. How are they getting clicks for this? They're not well known around here. Well, they might not be well known with word of mouth like many businesses do depend on, but they could be the ones who are raking in all of the traffic. And so once a business owner is like, okay, wow, well, they're getting, 50 clicks a month onto their website from people searching for this service near them. Well, maybe we can do that. And once they start to understand that, I often explain SEO as setting up traps. And obviously it's not really traps, but it's all about being where your customer is searching. And so in a lot of different marketing channels, you're trying to kind of throw your customer off guard by surprising them somewhere, like a poster on the subway or a random billboard down the highway, right? But it's like if I'm driving down the highway, what are the odds that I really might need, legal help? I mean, I might. That's why those things do work. But with SEO, you're specifically setting yourself up to be there when someone is searching for you. So rather than it being completely outbound, it's inbound. So that also means everyone that clicks onto your website from a query like that is a very hot lead. They're looking for exactly what you offer. And so that's why I view SEO as super powerful.
And it also ties into other spaces. SEOing, as you mentioned, is in all aspects, whether it's website or YouTube channel or social media posts. You have to understand what leverages you versus your competitors, but also that inbound, right? And is this going to be something, like you said, you're surprising someone with a billboard on the highway? How many of those people that drive by really need that service first if they're searching keywords and that populates? And I use a very similar example with podcasting. I do the SEOing on the back end for podcasts, and they're like, well, why is that so important? And I'm like, well, when someone types in that search word or that one thing that you're really an expert in and we're talking about, it's going to populate for them in a space where, websites and all this stuff, there's hundreds and thousands of options. What is going to make someone click on you versus someone else? It's the easeability. One other thing that I'd love to get your opinion on as well, and it leans into the website side of things because you also help all of your clients with the website design and really making sure that's optimized to get the clicks, is when I talk to people about things, I'm like, if you're not making it easy for me, you're giving me more of the ability to go, okay, I'm washing my hands, I'm out. I'm going on to the next thing. No matter what that is in life. If you make me click something to get to the place I need to be 10 times instead of 5, just because you think that's going to make me want, you're now giving me double the amount of time to say, you know what, this is too difficult. I got to click too much. I don't have time for this. I'm on to the next thing. It's how easy do you want the information to sit? So in working with people on SEOing for websites, you also help rebuild a website, create a website. Why do you find not just the SEOing side to be important, but how the website sits to be so important?
Yeah. So the way that I look at a company's, or how I'm actually putting the information onto a website, I break it down into 3 parties that we have to satisfy every time that we're posting a website, new page, anything. First of all, we need to satisfy our end customer. So this comes with, creating visually appealing website. Like you said, making sure everything is, the general rule is 3 clicks deep is about as deep as you want to get, right? If someone wants to navigate on your website, you want to make it as easy as possible for them to find exactly where they want to go. So that's the first one, is your end customer. The second one is actually my clients. So whatever clients I have, they have a certain way that they want to actually be perceived. And, even though I'm familiar with many of the industries that I work with, every brand has their own kind of spin and their own selling points that are really important to touch on. So I make sure that I'm aligned with the brand as well. It's important to not only please your end customer, but also your brand when you work in a marketing environment. And then the third one is Google. So we're trying to not only please our customers, but then also please Google. And that's where SEO and web design together become a mix of an art and a science, where it's like, okay, so how can I give Google the information about our business in a way that completely makes sense to it and that makes it view us as an authority in the field, while at the same time not having anything look weird to the customer. Because I always say the web design aspect of it, I almost doesn't matter if you have no SEO. Because if no one can find your website, then it really doesn't matter what it looks like, right? But once you are getting that traffic onto your website, there's almost nothing more important than how the actual website works. And like you said, those small little moments, those small inconveniences, these are all things that make you click off. People don't think about it, but they do this every day. When you go on a Google and you search for something, if a website takes more than 2 seconds to load, 60% of people are going to click right off of it and be on to the second result. If you are the first result and you load that low, you must be doing a lot of other things great, and you're going to end up dropping down eventually, because website speed is incredibly important. Once you have the technical stuff optimized, it's all about conversion optimization, things like strong call to actions. A lot of people also will kind of put something abstract as their main title. Like, let's imagine it's a landscaping business. Instead of saying reimagining your outdoor oasis, like, what does that even really mean? I've seen so many websites like that, where it's like reimagining your outdoor oasis. Okay, like, think about a customer. They want to know exactly what you do. Imagine if it just said high-end patios and comprehensive outdoor solutions. That sounds a lot better to me and to Google. So these are the things that you have to think of when you're SEOing a website.
And I think it's real important, like you said, to make it easy. There's been so many times where I've gone onto a website and it's on my phone, and I can immediately tell it was not built to be on my phone. And this was a conversation I've actually had recently with a few people, because I launched, as you know, Quinn, an online business that's an apparel company. And I showed someone it on my laptop before we launched, like 2 days before we launched. And then I was like, oh yeah, and here's what it looks like on the phone. And his initial reaction was, oh my God, it's so easy, user friendly on the phone. It's so clean. Like, and he was like, I literally hate the websites where nothing fits on my phone screen. I could tell it was not built at all to be user friendly at all on my phone. And if we know, again, as you said, you have to know your target audience and who you're speaking to. Because if I'm talking to people who, in this case, are people who are traveling a lot, might not have a computer always accessible, are predominantly, if they might have a computer accessible, however, if they are the active duty military, their computer might be classified, so they're using their phone, and
Yep.
only their home computer might be accessible, and they might not be home for 2 weeks and they want to order stuff. And so it was, oh my God, wait. And then we got into the conversation how a lot of websites don't take that into account. Where are you meeting your clients? And what does
Absolutely.
that space look like?
Yeah. And when it comes to mobile optimization, a lot of people don't know this, but Google is actually using the mobile version of your website to determine where your rankings should be. So actually, your mobile optimized website is actually more important than your desktop website. And that's why at Juke, we actually take a kind of untraditional spin and we design our websites on mobile first, and then we adapt that into a laptop view because we know that most people are searching on their phone anyways. And that's why, SEO is such a fast moving space. If I were to have said that, 10, 15 years ago, that would not be the case, right? I mean, you you have to consider things are constantly changing. You have to always find the new place to meet your customer. In recent years, uh, sites like Reddit, where a community can post, you know, actionable and, you know, live answers to queries. Those kind of websites have been getting amazing SEO. Google has been prioritizing them because it's direct answers to very specific queries. Some SEO agencies have been utilizing this to, make posts on behalf of their clients and, take advantage of the fact that that is high up in the SERPs and people are going to be reading it. So you always have to be adapting. You always have to be thinking about where your customers are and where you aren't, and bridging that gap. And yeah, being mobily, having your website mobile optimized is really one of the top things that a business can do right now.
When with Juke Marketing's emphasis on transparency and true partnership, which I also brought up in the intro, how do you approach building trust with your clients in an industry where skepticism about SEO and digital marketing agencies is so common? And what do you think sets Juke apart in fostering these relationships?
Yeah, so one of the first things I realized when I discovered SEO, and I was very intrigued by the industry, is that it's filled with scam artists. It's filled with people who aren't doing the right thing. It's filled with a million people pretending that they know things that they don't. And I think the real reason why this industry is preyed on by scammy type people is because the data that actually shows if progress is being made is not something that the average person would be able to read, comprehend, and draw conclusions on. And so I understood this very early on, and I understood the value in being able to give very concise and clear reports to your clients. In terms of transparency, I built this entire agency on the idea of being completely transparent to our clients. That's one of my core morality points that I try to stick to at all times for this business. And it started in the beginning with that first roofing client I got, which was being completely transparent with him about that I had never done SEO before. And I think people will honestly overlook the value of pure transparency. In a sales situation, people are so used to getting the wool pulled over their eyes, to getting their attention kind of fixated on one part that the salesman wants it fixated on. And what I try to do is I explain exactly what I am, exactly the skills I have, what I've done in the past. And if you only speak to what you genuinely know, then you have nothing to worry about. And also just pricing accordingly. Like I'm not going to pretend like I am the best SEO in the world, and that's something that's taken me very far is just being like, hey, look, this premium agency that's been around for 30 years charges this. I'm newer. I still do a great job. I'll get you great results, but I charge this. It's a great way to save money for a business too. And I think that, being in the early stages, obviously we're not as scaled as a lot of agencies, but it's an advantage for smaller agencies. I talk to each of my clients on a weekly basis, and sometimes in a more casual way than you might expect. It's not just me sitting down with them for a 20-minute block and being like, I did this, this, and this, and this. All right, bye. No, it's like I have a real relationship with these people. I'm constantly asking them about other aspects of their business. Like one of my clients runs their own ads. And so, I'm doing the SEO, he's doing the ads, and, I work with him to make sure that our strategies are aligned. So yeah, I think it's all just about being transparent, being vulnerable with your clients, not trying to be anything you aren't.
Another thing too is And to your point, when you mentioned pricing, is understand the market, right? So if you are in a market where you're serving smaller businesses, smaller, medium sized, like you are, potentially that solo entrepreneur, those people who have 10 or less employees, a medium sized business, whether they're year one or they're year 20, they don't have the same budget as someone like Google who has thousands and thousands of employees, right? And that mega corporation. So understanding and really taking the time to evaluate who is my market, what is the funds they want to have, and why do I want to serve that market? What is the impact and reason I'm serving that market? And you can always grow and create different market segments or just grow out of the market. But it's also, someone who comes in with a high ticket option for a solo entrepreneur that's in year one of their business, that should not be the client market tell right there. Like, you have to understand there's different markets, and you could be the expert but not be in someone's price point. And you could be the expert and going, okay, I am the expert, so this is what I'm going to do, and I understand this is the budget sphere we're working in.
Absolutely. Yep. Keeping that all in mind is crucial.
When SEOing can often feel overwhelming for businesses trying to navigate it on their own. What is one common misconception about SEOing that you encounter, and how do you help your clients better understand and leverage it to grow their visibility?
Right. So I think probably the largest SEO misconception is that it's a one and done, right? Like I've had a lot of people say, okay, so you're going to build a website and then you're going to SEO it and then we're good. And while there is some truth to the fact that you can get some short wins off of, doing the small things and doing the high impact short-term things all on the front, SEO is an ongoing thing. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't understand, but you have to think about it this way. Not only are you trying to optimize for search, all your competitors are also trying to optimize for search. And then on top of that, Google is constantly changing the way that their algorithm works. So you're also having to adapt for that. So, SEO, like I've said, it's an ever changing industry. And I think that's why the trust part is so important between the client and the service provider, is because when the goalposts kind of move when Google decides to go switch the algorithm. So you have to be able to pivot. You have to be able to communicate to your clients, okay, look, this is what's changing right now, and here's how we're going to adapt to it. And being light on your feet, being able to pivot is key in this industry.
Quinn, on building on that, for business owners who are just starting to think about SEOing and try to adapt to all the changes, and like you said, things are constantly changing, you have to keep that in mind. What are some essential tips you would give them to improve their online presence and start attracting more local customers?
I would say the most impactful thing that you can do right now as a business owner to improve your SEO is sit down with a blank sheet of paper and you're going to categorize out your business. Because when we think about SEO, it's all based around the idea of keywords, coming up for certain keywords. And so to identify which keywords you want to come up for, first we need to break down your business. Write down every single service that you provide. Write down every single product that you provide. Write down every single industry that you serve. Okay, now you have 3 different kind of content bundles to start writing on. And you should have a page for every single one of those services, every single variation, right? Every single product that you serve, and then all of the industries as well. Now, once you get the basics done, you can start kind of converging those things. Maybe you want to write a blog post about how a certain product operates within a certain industry. Now you're niching down to maybe a more specific search where someone from this industry is looking for your product and they find a page that is specifically addressed to them. So break down your business into topics and make sure that there's a page for each topic on your website.
I think that's such a great idea, and something we could all be doing, whether it has to do with SEOing for our business or just goals. I think that's a great tip to hit both and make sure that we're continuously aligning with our mission and our purpose and what drives us. Thank you, Quinn, for that.
Definitely.
Quinn, how can people get in touch with you if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, so definitely, if you guys want to connect, I do free consultations. You can go right to juke.marketing, and we have a Calendly link in the bottom. Feel free to sign up, and I will be happy to chat with you about your SEO. And also, you can reach out via email, quinn@juke.marketing. Be happy to chat with anyone.
Thank you, Quinn, for all of your insight today.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thanks so much for being a great host, Olivia.
Of course. I've really enjoyed our conversation because you've also hit on things that, like I said earlier, are unknown to a lot of people. And you've given some great insight. And a few of those key takeaways from today's conversation include marketing can be intimidating, and that is okay. I think, as Quinn mentioned early on, it is okay to understand that marketing is intimidating. And there's a lot of unknown, and there's a lot of things that we have to learn with it, as well as some ways to demonstrate a solution or what is missing is to demonstrate what the competitors are doing. And what if you actually took the steps that a potential client is going to take? What is that outcome going to be? And I love how Quinn brought that up. One way he talks to potential clients is not just by researching what they're currently doing and what is working and where they might be needing help with, but is also demonstrating to them, hey, if I actually type this into Google, this is what's coming up currently. This is why your competitors are coming up. Have you thought about these things? And really demonstrating, not just by saying, but by doing. And I love how Quinn brought that up. And it is something we could all do, is really just hit the nail on the head by demonstrating, hey, this is where you stand, right? And there's not really a way we can, demonstrate that problem better and what the potential outcome can be than by demonstrating it. As well as SEOing is being where customers are searching. And I really appreciate how Quinn demonstrated that and explained it in such a simple way. Your SEOing is putting you where customers are searching, using words that your customers are searching, as well as there's 3 parties you need to be satisfying on your website. It's the end customer, you as the business, and Google. And each 3, as Quinn mentioned, are so important in their own way. And you need to make sure that your website is hitting those 3 people and parties in every way, as well as you should be able to get where you want to be in 3 clicks. I love how Quinn brought up this point, because think about it. How many times have all of us clicked one too many times and left? And Quinn sharing that nugget of it typically is 3 clicks. If you can't get where you want to be in 3 clicks, you're not going to end up going. And if you're a business owner, you're going to potentially end up losing a really hot lead on a client, as well as your website speed is so important. How many times has a website taken too long and we've all done it and loaded it 1 or 2 times and then it's still not going and you're like, I'm out. Yeah. I've done it. Sometimes you give people the benefit of the doubt. Sometimes you're like, is it my internet? But after 1 or 2 times, you're done and you're never touching it again. So really identify what is your speed on your website, as well as have a strong call to action. I think, like Quinn mentioned earlier, having that call to action that says, this is what you should be doing. Here's what we do. This is why you should hire us. Makes it clean, simple, lets clients know what you can do to serve them. As well as your mobile website is more important. And Quinn's approach with Juke Marketing with this, I think, is so unique but so important. Again, it's identifying where your customers sit, what their tools they're using. And as Quinn mentioned, so many times people are now going to the mobile website and using their mobile devices to get to your website. And Google is taking that into account. So you should also be taking that into account. This was a great episode with our top-notch guest, Quinn Dallai. Thank you for listening and have a successful day.